Major news coming out of the travel industry and how that affects Hawaii travel, especially this holiday season. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how the FAA's 10% flight cuts that go into effect today, November 7th, are impacting flights to Hawaii and between the islands. We'll talk about the steps you can take now that you can help position yourself to know what to do if your flight does get canceled. And actually, I just booked my family's flights last week for a trip in 2 months. So I am starting to strategize what we're going to do, but it's going to all work out because today it's still Aloha Friday.
It's Aloha Friday, got me feeling all irate. It's the weekend finally, we gotta celebrate.
So if you're planning a trip to Hawaii right now, or you're a resident traveling between islands, the deal is the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA, started cutting flight capacity today, Friday, November 7th, at 40 of the nation's busiest airports. And it's not a small cut, it's 10% of flights. So that's roughly 3,500 to 4,000 flights eliminated every single day across the country. Now, why is it happening? Why now? Well, I mean, we're staring down the holiday season right now. Halloween is over and Thanksgiving is going to be here before we know it. But it all goes back to the government shutdown. Yesterday marked day 36, making it the longest shutdown in U.S. history. And you've got about 11,000 air traffic controllers who've been working without pay since October 1st. And on top of all that, the FAA is already short about 3,500 controllers from where they need to be to operate at full capacity. So to sum that up, controllers are picking up side jobs just to pay bills, and the FAA is seeing reports of fatigue and stress, which obviously is something that you don't want in the FAA or the traffic controllers. The cuts are going to be phased in. So today it's 4%, tomorrow 5%. So it goes pretty quick. And then Sunday 6%. And then it hits the full 10% by next week. And it stays there until the shutdown ends, hopefully sooner rather than later. The FAA administrator, Brian Bedford, which is kind of cool because he spells his name with a Y like I do. But anyways, he's been in the aviation service for 35 years. And he says he's never seen anything like this. His quote was, "We're in new territory with this." And when someone with that much experience and who has seen a lot, that's pretty serious. So, but here's the thing about Hawaii and Hawaii travel in general. The islands are almost entirely dependent on air travel. I mean, you got a few cruises. Just about every visitor arrives by plane. And Honolulu Airport, Daniel K. Inouye Airport, is on the list of 40 airports to see cuts. But honestly, that's not really the biggest problem. The real issue is what's happening on the continent. All major West Coast hubs that feed into Hawaii are being cut. So you got LA, San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Oakland, San Diego. Every single one of them are going to see these percentage of cuts. So like when LAX cuts 10% of its flights, you're talking about hundreds of seats to Hawaii disappearing every day. And when you multiply that across all those airports, you can see why it's such an important topic for travel to Hawaii. And it's not just about getting to Hawaii. You're talking about also inter-island travel is already being affected. Alaska and Hawaiian Airlines have already canceled 4 inter-island flights today. So that's a round trip between Honolulu and Maui, and a round trip between Honolulu and Kona. They're still running 20 Honolulu-Maui round trips and 15 Honolulu-Kona round trips daily. So it's not like everything is being shut down. But you can see how quickly that this is starting to impact the islands. I mean, they run feels like every half hour, like a bus, they're running these inter-island flights. So, but that is impacting travel. And to talk a little bit about the specific airlines, so Southwest, they use the same planes actually for mainland to Hawaii and inter-island flights. So if mainland service gets cut, inter-island capacity shrinks with Southwest. And Hawaiian Airlines has the same challenge now. Don't even get me started about what it was like booking our recent flight. Maybe I'll say that for another episode. Anyway, these airlines, their inter-island schedules, they depend on connecting passengers from mainland flights. So one delay or one cancellation, and it creates a domino effect across the islands. So all that to say, what does it mean if you're traveling? So 3 things. I kind of boil it down to 3 things I think is important to note. First, airfares are more than likely going to rise, honestly, especially for holiday season. But in light of this announcement, there's just going to be fewer flights. The demand is going to be higher. 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, peak travel, and suddenly there's way fewer seats. So supply and demand. Second, if your flight does get canceled, rebooking is going to be pretty tough probably. You're competing with thousands of other passengers for limited seats. So some people are going to be stranded for a couple hours at best, and then a day or two at worst. And third, 60% of Americans have already reconsidered their travel plans. That's really uncertain how things are right now as far as air travel goes. So if you do have a trip booked, and especially in the next couple months, what can you actually do? First thing is download your Airlines app if you haven't already. Enable every notification. For example, one thing that I've always been good at is using the Hawaiian Airlines app. And when I booked this last time, there was already a flight change to our Honolulu to Long Beach. And I happened just to see it like buried in an email. So those notifications, at least for me, weren't working. So I'm not sure how the system works yet, but I need to go through it and figure it out. And then I'll probably give it to you in a couple months after our trip. But anyway, you want to enable push notifications, texts, all the good stuff, and make sure your contact info is current on your reservation. That's how you're going to get the fastest updates about any cancellations, rebooking. And second, be as flexible as you can. I know that's hard advice because we're looking at our dates and we're like, we're not going to be flexible because that's just when we can go. But if you can, consider rescheduling or just be aware that things could get kind of bumpy in the next couple months. Hopefully this all gets resolved in the next couple weeks or so. But United, Delta, American, Southwest, Alaska, Hawaiian, they're all waiving change fees and offering refunds from what I've been able to gather. But you want to just double confirm that and do some of your own research on that for who you book with and the type of ticket you're booking and all that good stuff. Third, if you're going to travel, you're going to do it, just be prepared, because I haven't even talked about the airports yet. Get to the airport early. You want to, if you can, I think I've said it in my past couple episodes, my goal for our next trip is to pack carry-on only. And especially in light of all this is kind of the push to actually do that, because I think checked bags is going to be tough. Getting through TSA is going to be tough and longer than normal. So just get there early. I know right now it's recommended for 2 hours is kind of standard, but maybe plan for 3 hours to get there. And the next tip is, it's really important, travel insurance, but here's the deal with that. Standard trip insurance policies will not cover government shutdowns or FAA mandated flight cuts. Once the shutdown was announced, it became what they call a, quote, known issue. And from what I gather, standard policies won't help you with that. The only coverage that might work is cancel for any reason or CFAR, but you've got to buy CFAR within 14 to 21 days of your first trip payment. And even then, it only reimburses up to, I think it's 75% of non-refundable costs if you cancel at least 48 hours before departure. If you've already bought standard trip insurance before the FAA announcement, call your provider, ask if your policy covers government-related disruptions. But honestly, it doesn't seem like it does. And like I mentioned, I bought travel insurance for the very first time. I don't know why. I just had that feeling like, maybe I should buy it this time after, 20 plus years and 30, however many trips. But I'm not even sure if that's really going to matter in this situation. But I'm just praying and hoping that for my family's sake, but for your sake as well, if you're traveling soon, that this all gets resolved rather quickly. And the final thing I'll just leave us all with is have patience and be as kind as possible to airline employees. I mean, I can't imagine this has got to be tough for them as well. They didn't cause this. They're dealing with the same stress, probably more than most of us are. And, kindness really does go a long way, showing that aloha wherever you go. So that's kind of the lowdown, everything that's going on. The cuts start 4% today. They hit 10% by next week, and they stay there until the shutdown ends. Hopefully the shutdown ends on Monday. That'd be awesome. But check your airlines policies, update your contact info, have a backup plan. And I've got a full article where I go into more details and updates linked in the show notes below if you want to go deeper on this and do some of your own research. But Hawaii is still there. It's still Aloha Friday. It's still paradise. Get in there. It might just take a little bit more patience right now. So until next time, as always, live with aloha. Mahalo for listening to this episode of Hawaii's Best. To stay up to date on future episodes, hit follow on your podcast app.
It's Aloha Friday, got me feeling all irate. It's the weekend finally, we gotta celebrate. working so